up, everybody, and how the hell might y'all be doing? Welcome to another episode of the Crash Bang Boom Podcast. Today's guest is Gnarbot drummer and vinyl cymbal endorsee, and Chris Paprota. Chris and I get into fusion versus prog, his metal dad, Philly drum company, kindred spirits in the modern fusion world, and a whole lot more. So I hope y'all dig it. Crash Bang Boom Podcast can be found on iTunes Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Luminary, Google Play, Podbean, and Amazon Music Podcast. Feel free to check out any of the previous 200 plus episodes. Give me a like, a subscription, and or a positive review. Shout out to my sponsor, New Orleans Record Press. If you're looking to release some vinyl, hit them up at neworleansrecordpress.com and check out all the electroplating, mastering, design, packaging, vinyl coloring options, and they got that real-time quote generator to add it all up and keep tabs. They also print 12 and 7-inch records in 150 and 180 gram variants, and they do small runs of 100 and larger runs up into the thousands. So hit them up, and that's neworleansrecordpress.com. As venues and musicians weather these tough times, do keep tabs on artists' live streams, lessons, tutorials, and master classes from your favorite musicians, merch or physical releases that are for sale, as well as websites like saveourstages.com looking to assist venues in these tough times. So without further ado, here we go. Chris Paprota. New Gnarbot record out soon, so keep your eyes and ears peeled. Crash, bang, boom.
Crowds go mad with joy.
Yeah! All right, I'm here with Chris Paprota of Gnarbot, and who is also a drum instructor as well. How are you doing there, man?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Pretty good, man. I'm glad to be catching up with you. I've sort of became aware of you like a lot of the younger players that I think I have more of an awareness of in this day and age via social media and whatnot. I don't recall if someone shared something that you did or I don't know if it was via Gnarbot or I forget exactly the avenue in which that I kind of became aware of you. But since then, I've enjoyed your postings and checking out your playing and the whole thing. So it'll be cool to get into some of the background on all that goodness.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to be here and I appreciate you checking me out however you found me.
Yeah.
I don't know, where should I begin?
Well, I know from looking at it, does Gnarbot have a full-length album coming out soon?
Yes, we do. We have I think it's 8 songs in total with like a few transition kind of songs. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be, I think, fully released in November, but we plan on releasing most of the songs as like single releases over the following months leading up to November. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this album has been like a long time coming. We started working on it like a year after we formed as a band, which now is like about 4 years ago. Wow. That I recorded like all the drums for it probably going on 4 years ago. So wow. It's kind of, we went into a studio like planning to kind of bang it out live. And I feel like at the time we weren't like good enough at playing our songs to really pull that off the way we anticipated it. So we ended up just like tracking drums. And then we just got really busy with gigs, and we have a habit of like not stopping writing new songs. Mm-hmm. Like we just completely, every time we get together, we're working on something new. So the album kind of took a back seat ended up being like 3 years. Wow. And it wasn't until this whole COVID shutdown thing that everybody else in the band was like, all right, let's use this downtime to really get all our tracks together and make this album a real thing. Mm-hmm. So that's the album story.
Yeah. Was it a tedious process in recording and nailing all of your drum parts? Were you well rehearsed enough and getting into there that you were pretty comfortable playing it? Or I mean, even regardless in my experience of how well prepared you are, you can drill all the things that you think will be more problematic only to overlook something else that'll then trip you up when you get in there. So it inevitably, somewhere along the line, it can get sticky. So how was that process for you recording those drums?
Well, like I said, it's already been like almost 4 years since then. So, and at the time, like we didn't develop the relationship that we have now. It had only been, like I said, like a year or less since we formed and got together. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I guess I was less comfortable playing the music for sure, just by nature of it not being as long.
Yeah.
I felt good going in and recording the stuff. Like I knew the songs. But now I have mixed feelings about it just because it's been 3 years since then, and I know I would nail the shit out of that music now.
Yeah.
So listening to the songs, it's really hard to hear past like my old self and criticizing like, oh, what would I do different now?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think I remember going in feeling pretty good about it at the time.
Yeah.
But like I said now, like I listen back and I'm like, like I like it though. I do.
Sure.
I don't mean to sound like I dislike the music.
Sure. So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you ended up just keeping the drum tracks from that initial session, and then with COVID happening and everybody being having downtime at home, did everybody have home studios that they were able to track all the additional elements on, essentially, without having to go into a studio? So you were able to complete the record at that point?
Yeah. Yep. That's how we did it. It was just really DIY.
I mean, the recurring theme in talking about all this COVID stuff is that musicians, drummers, etc., everyone's been trying to get their home studio together to some degree. So if you didn't have it before, you out of necessity, you were probably going to need to get it together for that time, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. I went off the deep end with like all kinds of stuff over this past year. Like I got really into recording with a cassette 4-track recorder, and like even though it's like an old medium that's like not as good as modern day stuff in a lot of ways, like I became super obsessed with that. And man, I already had like a pretty not state of the art home studio, but like I could do pretty much anything I wanted to do. But
Yeah.
so I took a weird little like side interest in the whole cassette analog thing.
Nice. And you said that was just a 4-track cassette recorder?
Yeah. So my father-in-law has like this Amazon business where he like sells old cassette recordings and 8-tracks and stuff.
Nice.
And when Gnarbot was on tour in Florida, we stopped at his house, and he wanted to just like get rid of a bunch of old music gear that he had lying around. Like he plays guitar and has had like an on and off love-hate relationship with it his whole life. And he just was like, oh, I'm quitting, and gave me like all his gear. And one of the things he gave me was this old Tascam 4-track cassette recorder.
Yep.
And I had been like researching them, and I had no idea he had it. So it was just like a coincidence. Like I felt like it was like meant to be that I got this thing. I just went in head first on that.
Nice. That's funny that with all of the modern technological conveniences that you ended up reverting back to an older medium, as you said, in cassette recordings. I too used to work with those, and you could get some good stuff out of them. I mean, have you been pretty happy with some of the sounds you were getting to those cassettes?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I ended up getting a bunch of like analog processors, like EQs and compressors and stuff to use with it.
Nice.
And it's kind of funny because like I feel like, I guess back in the day when those things came out, the portable 4-tracks, like they were meant for just like kind of like demo purposes, not really trying to do anything real studio quality. But I tried to make like a cassette recordings on steroids. I don't know. Like I put a lot of effort into making it sound as good as I could, despite it being like this kind of rinky-dink thing.
Totally. That's super cool, man. I was going to ask you if you had ever like tied in doing like play along or playthrough videos of your actual studio recordings. I've done that a couple of times where I go in and I have a day to record the drums, and I'm like, I'll set up my GoPros every time before I sit down. I'll hit record. But after a while, I realized it was just way too much of a distraction, like that I needed to actually just focus on doing what the hell I was there to be doing. And it's always great if you could do a playthrough video of you doing the actual take of a song. That's great. But I don't know if you've ever found yourself just multitasking, doing stuff like that when you should be focusing on a recording necessarily, or have you been able to, because you've got some great playthrough videos. So I don't know, did you just book those independently and then that's what was going on that day? It was like you were there to do a playthrough video type thing?
So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about with the whole distraction thing. Like do it, like if you're trying to record stuff on your own and run the video part of things. Like I agree that if the main focus is like the audio, you're trying to get like a good sounding recording, that it's almost best to not mess with video stuff. Yeah. But I don't know exactly which videos you're referring to, but like the Meinl videos I've done, those have been like exclusively for getting video. So yeah. I go, like, they usually fly me out to like a studio in Nashville, and they have a whole video team. So I'm not worried about hitting record or anything like that.
That's awesome.
So in those cases, I'm more able to I mean, assuming I get over the nerves of this being like a production with money behind it and stuff,
Yeah.
I don't have the hassle of pressing record and worrying about literally every element of everything going on. I can
Exactly.
usually just settle in and play.
Yeah, totally, man. And watching some of those mono videos that you referenced, what's the kit that you're playing? Is that one of those Philadelphia Drum Company kits? Because it sounds great. And what's the connection with them?
Okay, so yes, that is a Philadelphia Drum Company kit, and those are all handmade by a good friend of mine named Ethan Feinstein, and he is I met him through the people that I'm involved with with Gnarbot. The guitar player in my band, Zach Lopresti, has another band called Out of the Beard Space, and Ethan is the drummer in that band. And he's an incredible drummer, but he also happens to be like really into woodworking and stuff. He had been getting into building drums, and since then, like over the past like 2 years, I would say it's really kind of, I wouldn't say blown up, but he's doing like a really damn good job from the ground up. Like he's really starting to build a name for his company and stuff.
That's awesome.
And the drums are like incredibly nice. Like it's not just like, this is my friend and I play his drums. Like they're fucking amazing. And I'm blown away anytime I play the drums that I have or any of his new drums that he lets me try out.
Yeah.
They're just great drums.
Awesome, man. Would you think of modern fusion drummers? And I certainly consider you to kind of be one in that space with, the Snarky Puppy or like from New Orleans, Nutty Professor, or of course, drummers like Matt Garska of Animals as Leaders. Who do you see as some of the contemporaries in said genre, or even, someone who might be influential to you? Because in talking to some of the younger players on this podcast, Matt Garska does seem to come up a lot, which is interesting.
Oh yeah, Matt was a huge influence for me. I mean, he still is, but he was especially influential to me. Like when, I don't know, maybe around like 2009 or so, which was when I graduated high school. I always wanted to play drums, like growing up through high school and stuff. Like I was a drummer, but it was like the intensity of my focus was off and on over those years. And then it was like I was at the end of high school and I was like, all right, I should really take this seriously. So I started checking out like everything I possibly could on YouTube and studying with a bunch of teachers and stuff. But I had come across Matt through these Berkeley shed session videos that were really popping off on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
Around 2009. Like that was the period where I was heavily influenced by him, like before he was even out of college and stuff. Mm-hmm. And maybe like a year after that, I took a Skype lesson with him and we kind of became friends and whatnot. So like, yeah, he rubbed off on me in a huge way. Other people that have influenced me heavily over the years in that more modern fusion style, there's Nate Wood is a massive influence on me. Oh yeah,
he's incredible.
So ridiculous. Yeah, just insane. Like just his drumming. I mean, like he does his whole four thing where he's playing bass and keys and singing at the same time. And none of that shit he's doing is like placeholdery.
No.
Like he's interacting with himself. He's like this giant organism of music.
No, it's insane. Yeah. I mean, I've said it before, like normally if it was a one-man band, if you want to call it that, like you said, it would probably be a little bit of some placeholders here and there, but like I genuinely like listening to it and to think that it's done live, no less. Like, he's a special kind of alien. I've said that before, and I'll continue to say that. He's amazing. And like you said, just his drumming alone, like in Knee Body, forget about it. He's crazy.
Yeah. He's ridiculous. Along the lines of those guys, there's like a bunch of people that fall like in that same category, like the more coming from the jazz side of things, like Mark Juliana.
Sure.
And Keith Carlock.
Yep.
Chris Dave.
Yep.
Just that whole thing coming from a more like jazz nuanced side of things. Mm-hmm. Those are the guys I'm into. Who else? Mason Guidry. That's like a more like a younger guy, like my age. He's like a legend in his own right in the way that he plays like better than anybody who's ever lived, I feel like, but he's not like on that same level of recognition as the guys I previously mentioned, but he's like one of those people that influence me. Anytime I hear him, I'm just like, like I just like, these are the type of players that when I hear them, I can't help but feel like I'm like downloading new information. Like it's just like
Totally.
I can't help but be made better by hearing them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting and mention the modern kind of fusion movement players, et cetera, because I think from my perspective, in the late 60s into the 70s, you kind of had what Tony Williams did with John McLaughlin and Alan Holdsworth. And then, of course, the extension from there with Billy Cobham, Narada Michael Walden, and Mahavishnu, and Lenny White's work, and those like 70s fusion players. And then once you get to like the 80s, then you have like the Dave Weckels, Vinnie Colaiuta, Dennis Chambers, et cetera. From some of those older guys, is there any particular player amongst them that you feel as though is an influence to you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of them really, because I went through a huge period of listening to all that stuff, like Mahavishnu and Return to Forever and stuff like that.
Yep.
Of those guys that I feel like has influenced me the most, I would say Tony Williams, but not so much the fusion Lifetime stuff.
Right.
Even though I like that music, it's just something about his playing with Miles Davis and stuff that I prefer.
Absolutely.
Or has like influenced me in a bigger way. Even though I'm not like a real jazz guy myself. All the Chick Corea electric band drummers like Dave Weckl and Gary Novak, Vinnie Colaiuta. Yeah, those guys are just massively influential to me too.
That's awesome.
There's a ton.
Were there any instructors along the way for you? You mentioned some of your drum instructors. Were there any particular ones that were especially influential for you coming up as a younger player?
Oh yeah, definitely. My first real drum teacher, this guy Neil Garthley, who's from New Jersey, not too far away from where I live, and like I had been playing maybe 5 years before I started studying with him, and he just took who I was at the time, which was kind of like I tried to do shit that I couldn't really do. I was like considered a good drummer for like being 16 or whatever I was, but yeah, I was just trying to do like flashy, impressive shit. Yeah. And he like turned me on to more fundamentals of jazz independence and Afro-Cuban kind of styles, and just made me see that there was such a benefit to like understanding things in a more conventional scholastic way. And then from there, he was a student of Dom Famularo. So maybe 2 years later, yeah, like after I graduated high school, I started studying with Dom for about 2 years, and that was like the most valuable studying time I had ever done, because he really stressed the importance of everything that is fundamental about playing drums, down to your posture, your breathing, your technique. He like rewired my brain to really look at things in like anytime I look at anything musically, I'm like seeing like what's there that makes this thing tick, and like how can I get a grasp on that in order to manipulate and express myself with those components, you know? Yeah. Just a massively influential guy on me. And then there was like other guys I took like one-off lessons with, like David Garibaldi. Awesome. And I went to a drum camp in Canada this one time, and there was like Dennis Chambers, Mike Mangini, Horacio Hernandez, Kenwood Denard. They were all there, and just like being in their presence and like basically living with them for a week, that's kind of what it was like. That was just massively influential. And just like playing in front of them and them giving you like positive feedback and stuff, it just made the whole thing like have a forward trajectory, because I felt like I was like on the right track, you know? Right.
It's awesome that you mentioned David Garibaldi. He's a guy that I talk a lot about, and he's got to be in my top 5, because he was kind of at a crucial moment in which I had studied some jazz independence and Afro-Cuban stuff, and I wasn't really sure what I would do with all of that information. And then when I got one of those VHS, the Tower Groove, I believe it was, VHS instructional videos, I saw his synthesis of like funk with like all of these rhythms. And I didn't have the wherewithal to piece all that together, but in seeing him do it and then learning those grooves, it was pretty monumental for me. And I certainly, to this day, and even then, never played him as cleanly as he did. I'd say that I was at best like a punk rock version of David Garibaldi's grooves at that point, and still to this day. But definitely, that's awesome that you took a lesson with him. I'm a massive fan of that guy. He is incredible.
Yeah, he's insane. I've been like turned back onto Tower of Power recently a lot. I don't know, back when I first became aware of him and Tower of Power, it was more like I was just like a drum nerd. I wasn't so much into the music for the sake of the full package that is Tower of Power.
Sure.
And now I'm like just listening to all their old shit, and even up until like their entire catalog up until now, like it's just mind blowing how tight they were, especially the older stuff, because they were like recording that all like without a click and without the modern means of sort of composition.
Mm-hmm.
Like all those arrangements are ridiculous, like with the horns and the syncopation and
Oh yeah,
all these hits and shit, like
yeah.
and they're super tight, like from beginning to end,
Right.
on like some rather like long and involved songs. It's just, I don't know, it's amazing.
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned going down YouTube rabbit holes and looking at Matt Garska and everything, and it's kind of one of my ongoing jokes, especially with younger players, that like just the pathways that you would have to get like a VHS instructional video. Hopefully you had some sort of a music store that had it in stock, or like on the forefront of those, there was always like little trailers for other videos, and there in that came like a little DCI card, and you could mail that in with a check, I believe, saying which video you wanted them to snail mail you. So weeks later, you'd finally get the instructional video that you were waiting on, and it's just like you didn't look much further than that entire absurd process to get information, and how expedited it is, and how oversaturated it is, and at times even overwhelming it is at times. But you'd also have to make the distinction that like these seemingly prodigal players at young ages, you can't say that it doesn't have anything to do with that access to all of that information and being able to physically watch any player at any time. I mean, imagine backing up a record and hoping you got it around to the spot that you needed to hear it again to be able to sort of approximate what it was that you heard. You know, it's just like, man, there's so much to see now. It's crazy.
Oh yeah. Kids are just better than ever right now. It's insane. And like, there's a lot of, I catch myself doing this. Like, I'll be like, oh, like, yeah, they're so good, but they don't have this or that because it's too easy, or there's not like, they don't want it enough or something because it's so oversaturated. But like, at the end of the day, yeah, people are just getting better and better. Like, at this point, I don't have anything bad to say about it. It's incredible. And it's great that technology is progressing to make more and more incredible players.
Totally, man.
Yeah.
Well, I saw a pic of you, and I think it was with you and your dad, I believe, and he was wearing a Master of Puppets T-shirt. And I thought, well, one, either your dad's pretty cool and or very young, and you too must be relatively young as well, because I'm about to be 45. So
okay.
I'm assuming, how old are you?
Turn 30 in November.
Gotcha. Yeah. You'll be 30 this year. Yeah, I'll be 45 this year. So I'm
Mm.
basically old enough to be your father. I would be a very irresponsible 15-year-old shitty version of a father, but a father in some parallel universe potentially.
Yeah.
Did you grow up in a house filled with music or players for that matter?
Well, sort of. My dad, yeah, he's like a metalhead. He's not much older than you. I think he's 52.
Okay.
So like, he was pretty young when I was born, but yeah, he's just a cool, nutty guy. And, always had like thrash metal blasting, and yeah, so that's like he played guitar a little bit. He knew some Metallica songs, and like that's how I started playing. Like that's why music seemed like it was an option for me,
Mm-hmm.
because I was exposed to it through him. And so like when I first got a drum set, we would jam like Metallica covers and stuff like that.
Awesome.
But that's really the extent of music in my family. It's not like some deep thing.
Yeah.
But I'm glad it was what it was, you know?
Yeah.
Like, got me started.
Has he told you about any shows that he saw back in the day that sounded especially killer? Did he see Metallica back in the day?
No, he actually didn't. Like, surprisingly, like I don't know, he's just been a real hard, like, working man kind of guy since he was like in his teens. He never even went to any of those crazy shows to see those bands. Not that long ago, I think it was for his 50th birthday, we went and saw it was like a big tour with a bunch of old metal bands. Like it was Slayer, Anthrax.
Sure.
Those are the two main bands on the bill that he was really excited to see.
That's awesome.
That was just so cool to be there and like see him seeing like these people that he's listened to for his whole life.
Right.
It was awesome.
Well, with him listening to metal in the house when you first started, well, first of all, how old were you when you got your first kit?
I was 11.
Oh, okay. At that time, I mean, it sounds like if you were playing Metallica covers with your dad occasionally, I'm assuming you were also listening to other metal bands at the time. I mean, did you kind of start off playing like metal initially?
Yeah, definitely. Those bands like Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, Pantera. And then from there, he listened to like a lot of cool shit, like all the grunge stuff, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains.
Of course.
Rage Against the Machine, stuff like that. So I also played around with that stuff, just popped it on my headphones and jammed along. And then from there, I got into more like progressive stuff, like Rush and Dream Theater and all that.
Yeah, that's funny that you say Russian Dream Theater. That seems to be a common gateway to something. Maybe it's jazz on the other side or what, but it seems as though that if you start with metal, that some of that progressive prog, whatever you want to call it, and even the stuff prior to that, even if it's Yes or any of that stuff, it seems to be that it's a gateway to something that's on the other side oftentimes.
Yep. I've had this conversation so many times with people about that. And it works the other way too. Like if somebody comes up through more of like a funk soul kind of thing, they'll find their way into the fusion from something like it'll be maybe Tower of Power and then Mahavishnu, which has heavier elements. And then they like metal after that. It's funny.
Exactly. It's if you're starting with rock, prog is your gateway to potentially jazz. And if you start with jazz, fusion is your gateway to rock.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, you mentioned Jersey. I don't know if you're based out of Philly presently, or did you grow up in Jersey and then you're based out of Philly, or you're still in Jersey?
I'm still in Jersey. Gnarbot is based out of Philly. Like we're like three of us actually live in New Jersey, but like we've all moved around a bit. But Philly's like the closest big music city to us.
How far away is Philly from where you are?
I'm like an hour and 20 minutes away.
Okay.
Like an hour and 20-minute drive. Yeah.
Gotcha, man. Well, with your solo material, I was looking at it, and did you start playing guitar because guitars were around the house because your dad played them, and is that sort of your intro into being a multi-instrumentalist?
Pretty much, yeah. It's weird. Like, even though there were guitars around me like my whole life, I didn't really pick one up until I started playing with other kids my own age. Mm-hmm. Just because I just kind of thought of it as like, oh, this is the thing my dad does, and I play the drums. Like, and it wasn't until I started playing with other kids my age that like I was like, oh yeah, let me try doing what my friends are doing, and that's when I started doing the whole like smoke on the water kind of thing.
Totally.
And then learning the songs that we were all playing, like Metallica and all those metal songs, and that's how I started playing guitar.
That's awesome. I too have put out some solo music, but there aren't much in the way of me playing instruments. A lot of it is just a MIDI keyboard and me fumbling through the shit and then editing it. And then the tedious task of going about that route. I wish I was more proficient on them. I have two guitars and they mostly just sit up on my walls. And I'm like, yeah, at some point or another, I'm going to end up playing those. And years later, they're still up on the wall. They look good. It's just that I'm not really playing the fucking things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could take advantage of all the resources on YouTube.
Yeah, right. I know that you were very right about that. My God, man. Were there any players for you growing up, seeing like in the Jersey area, Philly area, whatever, local players that maybe people might not know about that were influential on you?
Honestly, not that many that I know even their names. Like I used to go and like see whatever bar band I possibly could like through a window as a kid. Like I would just like kind of lean up against the glass and watch random bands that were playing at these bars nearby. But nobody local in that way was influential to me. Well, really, I think it has to do with where I live. Mm-hmm. Like I've always had to like travel to areas to find good players and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like where I live is just like the only live music you can really see is like classic rock cover bands.
Right. That's funny. Did with the studying, it sounds like you mostly studied with a few individual players or teachers rather, and then you had some one-offs in there. So you never went to like music school per se.
No. I really wanted to go to Berkeley, and I auditioned for Berkeley, and got in, but I didn't get any scholarship money. So I just knew I wouldn't be able to like afford it. And if I did do like the whole student loan thing, I'd still be in debt. So
Exactly.
and like studying with Dom, he kind of was like, you don't need to go to Berkeley. Like, why do you want to do that? Like he expressed all those views about like the debt, and you don't really need to go there. You're already a good player, and you're already studying with the right people, and you need to know how to interact socially and these kind of things. Like that's what's going to really make your music career, not going to some prestigious school.
Right.
When you can already play. And I'm glad, even though I tried and failed, I didn't fail, but I just didn't continue to go that way. I'm glad I didn't, because I know people in debt, and I feel bad for them.
I hear you. Absolutely, man. Well, with some of the like drumless tracks that I've seen you playing along with in like clinics and whatnot, I would imagine for those you just have a separate click track out for that, and then so you just mix a click in, or are you just playing with clickless drumless tracks?
For clinics and stuff, yeah, I never use the click, just because like I don't I've never found an efficient way to do that.
It's a pain in the ass. I've been going through it recently.
Yeah. So anytime I do that, yeah, it's without a click. And when I'm playing to like things I play to at clinics are mostly like my little MIDI drumless tracks, and I feel like there's enough rhythmic information in the track that I can grab onto something without it being like a blaring quarter note.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I get by with that until I figure out how to make the click happen.
Yeah. It's a process that I've been going through, trying to prep to do some live stuff with some of this solo stuff as well. And it is a bit of a pain in the ass for sure.
Yeah.
I mentioned some of the bands that I feel like in modern times exist within that realm that Gnarbot does. Are there any others, in your opinion, that you dig, that you feel are sort of kindred spirits in what y'all do as well?
There's some cool bands like in Philly that I feel like aren't as known, like that are on the same kind of level of knownness or unknownness as we are. There's this band called Chrome Els. It's Chrome ELS.
Mm-hmm.
They're all like jazz school kids from Philly. Not kids, like they're a little younger than me, I think. But just fucking ridiculous players. Like their music, it spans so much territory. Like I said, they all went to jazz school and stuff, so they have all that shit together. But the music is very like abrasive and soulful, and just it's like top to bottom, just like world class stuff. And I feel like it deserves to be heard more than it is.
Nice.
And the drummer for that band, this guy Lionel Forrester, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he goes by J Drums on Instagram, and he's ridiculous. He's one of those guys that I feel like is on the same level of influential as a guy like Mason Guidry, but just like, again, like legendary as far as his ability and like who he's known by. Everybody reveres him as like fucking incredible, but like not enough people know about him.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah. Giving him shout outs. I like it.
Oh yeah.
There you go. Well, what's on the agenda for the rest of the year, man? Are there, it's, the ongoing question, what sort of tentative plans are out there for potentially getting back and playing shows? Is there some of that in the future for now?
As far as Gnarbot playing shows, we have a couple dates that we've locked in coming up, like 2. I mean, it's not much, but since things are opening up again, we're feeling a little more optimistic about playing together. I mean, like over this whole time, especially with this album release, we were doing a lot of like just meetings about social media strategizing and stuff that's just like, like I just want to play.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to get back to playing, and we don't work strictly with like one agency anymore since gigs kind of fizzled out. But once this album's out, if we could do like a small like regional tour, we'll try to do that. But nothing really set in stone currently.
Gotcha. Right on, man. All right, Chris. Well, thanks for hanging, man. I appreciate your time. Talking about modern fusion, old fusion, everything in between. Gateways, not drugs, kids. Not drugs. Gateways, musical gateways, kids. But yeah, it was fun talking to you, man. Thanks for hanging.
Yeah, man. Likewise. Thank you for having me.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Chris for rapping. Good talking to him about Gnarbot, Fusion, prog, his metal dad, and all that good stuff. Be on the lookout for that new Gnarbot record, and we'll catch y'all on the next one. Crash, bang, boom.